was tempted on doing something different because it was top 5 weapons of 2015 and it was my top 5 most useful weapons of 2016. This whole thing is just my opinion on weapons that I've used and I find to be more useful than other stuff. Kind of ruling out primes and other ones, which has left me in quite a dilemma because, to be fair, there has been a lot of weapons recently that are actually useful. The Zenith itself is actually a pretty decent all-round shotty because it has that air burst, so it's kind of like the... not the Ogres, the other one, the launcher that begins with a T, it's the Tonko. It's kind of like the Tonko because you can explode it in mid-air, but it's also kind of heckish, which is a heck of a shame because I would have loved to have had that thing in here, but sadly, it just really kind of didn't make the cut as much as I was really hoping for. So we'll start this one kind of weirdly with number 5 being the new, and we're talking this is the only new weapon in this, simply because the stance on this was amazing. It doesn't deal the most amount of damage, but when it comes to usefulness out of the melee weapons, the 1.17 attack speed and the 40 slash actually made it a pretty useful melee weapon, and you just can't get over. Yes, it was a mastery rank 10 weapon, but not that good for crit chance. But considering this is the year of Focus 2.0 or 2.5 I think it is now, crit for melee weapons was thrown out the window, and this has a 28% status chance, which it didn't make it an amazing weapon. It made it a very rounded, decent, and also massive props because it is, of course, a new style of melee weapon. If it wasn't a new style, being the Warframe style of weapon, probably wouldn't have made it in here, but because it is, it was... I was going to honourably mention it, but I think sticking it at the bottom at number 5 was probably the best place for this thing. Coming in at number 4, I know I did just say that that would be the only one of the new weapons, but I thoroughly enjoyed this an insane amount. The Baza, however you want to pronounce it, this was a mastery rank 7 weapon. Its crit chance was 26%. It's fairly low on the impact, puncture and slash. It's classed as a submachine gun style weapon, but it was just the fact that this is a silent based automatic primary. I think it was a primary. Yes, it was a primary. Just had to quickly check that one there. Made it, yes, again, it's not the most damaging of weapons, but for stealth missions, low level stuff, this is amazing for. Mid level stuff, it's okay for. The higher end stuff, not so much because it doesn't do enough damage and they will become aware of your presence quicker. But if you like running stealth for day-to-day use, for the just normal missions, even some of the alerts, even some of the event stuff where you have to run in stealth, this is going to be a lot more useful just simply because it has that silent aspect to it. Coming in third from July, or was it the end of June, beginning of July, an update 21. It has to be the Nell. Mastery rank 10, yes, it's a secondary. It's the fact that this has the penitence... oh, I've completely forgotten the name of it. The penitence buff to it. Once you land that one headshot, you basically have unlimited ammo for, I think it was 3 seconds, unless you keep landing them, then used to carry on. That is what made this very useful. It had a 20% crit chance, its status was only 5%, but it was, all in all, a fairly useful... I think it did 150 total damage, with its main damage being puncture at 69 and impact at 63 and 18 on slash. But it was actually fairly useful. Again, this is more usefulness over downright damage dealing weapons. Its 1 round magazine means you have to land that headshot to be able to get the penitence buff thing to kick in, and then you get the unlimited ammo. And I think I'm just trying to remember, there's a penitence buff that it was actually called. I'm not really sure on that one. I did look through it and found a few different names. It was penitent buff and death knell buff. So it could be called many different things, but the fact that it had the ability to have infinite ammo, or an infinite sized magazine if you want to call it that, once you land that headshot, made it very, very useful at fairly decent range, because it had a really nice scope to it as well. That, and the fact the blueprint to actually build it was in the marketplace, and it only needed 2 Argon crystals and I think it was about 3,800 cryotic, made it easy to get a hold of and a very effective weapon. I really wanted to make the Sigma and Octantis, which was available in November of this year, or the Zenith, which was available from, I think it was the 15th of April. I wanted these to be number 2 and number 1, because the Zenith has got to be the most useful weapon I have used this year. But sadly, it's a 500 days played reward, so putting it in the most useful spot didn't really seem that fair. As for the Sigma, that's 700 days played. That's even less fair to put that in, because that's even harder to get a hold of. But I kind of came to the, I don't want to say conclusion that this could actually go in. It's gone into number 2 simply because it's hard to get a hold of, but it was my most useful weapon of the year because I have used it the most. Its status is 30%, its crit's pretty low, its secondary fire has 35 and 8 status, but the secondary fire mode is more crit based for its single fire mode, whereas its full auto primary isn't really that amazing. Again, this was more most useful weapons of the year. And coming in at number 1, launched on August the 2nd, 2017, has got to be the lens. Yes, I know it's a Mastery Rank 8 weapon. It's not the best weapon in the game, but this is one of the weapons that I have seen used more than pretty much any other weapon this year. It is incredibly useful for defense missions. It has that whole, how's it worded? The excess ammo picked up for other weapons will be converted into charges for the lens, so it has a built-in ammo mutator. It creates a 12-meter diameter area, or bubble if you want to call it that instantly does cold damage, and then after a short amount of time pops and deals large amounts of blast damage, which makes it great for defense missions, because once you figure out where the enemies are coming from, you can shoot this and then they kind of run into it. And the 660 blast damage with the 50% crit chance and the 2 times multiplier this had, yes, its status was only 5, it isn't the best weapon, but this has got to be the most used weapon that I have seen, ignoring things on the planes, because to be fair, when going there, everyone uses that big gun anyway. Oh, what's it called? The Opticore, that's the one. People tend to use the Opticore a lot, but that is a much older weapon. But for general defense missions, I see this pop out a lot, and I do find it fairly useful myself. So after looking through all the weapons that were released this year, probably the most useful, mainly because it wasn't actually nerfed and kept its 660 blast damage, its 50 impact and its 10 cold, it had to go to this. To be fair, last year Optimus Bow, Ivara's 4th ability, was my pick of best weapon of the year, because technically she pulls a weapon out. A lot of people disagreed with me, which is perfectly fine. They'll disagree with the lens as well, but this year was kind of the same thing. It's a bow. I do like my bow weapons. I always have, so I'm always going to favour them anyway. But it was more the fact that I have seen this used simply by more people than I have seen anything else used by, kind of favoured me towards it. Because if everybody's using it, and you like it as well, it tends to mean that the weapon's got that little something special that everybody likes. And it's not solely at number 1 because everybody else is using it. I like this thing a lot. Remembering, of course, this was my own opinion for these, nobody else's. A lot of people will disagree with me. I know this. I know these are not the most powerful weapons of the year. They were just the ones that I personally saw the most use out of, got the most used out of, or are still using the most. So, we'll leave this off here for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch yous next time.